this is my analogy for what is corporate strategy. I picked a Formula One team because you look at every season, they sort of lay out the rules by which the cars have to sort of follow. And you have a kind of an idea of what the courses on the schedule look like. But then week by week, you're sort of very much calibrating the conditions of the course, your race strategy, temperatures, every single week going in and like adjusting the car and looking at what do we need to do next to win? What are the things that are working well for our team? And then adjusting little parts of your approach based on where you know you're better or worse. So you know you're faster in straight. So you start adjusting little things to take advantage of where you know you're slightly better. With the end result being, how do we win? Right? At the end of the day, the reason these positions and things exist is to help us have an opportunity to succeed and have businesses be successful. So that was the analogy that I came to following this session.
It's interesting because I would have even then extended that analogy, because I think, again, it's always the case because you have so many different layers of looking at this. But that, not in every case. In many cases, that Formula One team is going to be owned by somebody as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you said Formula One, I was like, oh, I think he's going to be like, should Alfa Romeo have a Formula One team? Do you know what I mean?
That's a debate for another day.
How do they go? Yeah. No opinion expressed on this podcast. But you know, there's then another level to that again, which is like, should we even play in Formula One? Will that help us achieve our overall corporate aims? But then there's other teams, you know, that are just the Formula One team, and that's all they do, in which case they're thinking about corporate strategy from how do we make sure, you know, this is a viable business model for us to be a Formula One team.
Mine was very much in the garage, but you're right. It's, you know, why doesn't Lamborghini have a Formula One team where Ferrari does? It's like they have chosen as part of their corporate strategy, is this investment something that makes their other products more valuable or not? So you've elaborated my analogy, so I'll take full points for all of it.
So I would have liked to have come up with something witty about, you know, the choices you face when you come home drunk to a partner. But I'm not witty enough to do that. So maybe I just carry on with the sports analogies, right? It's the best place because, you know, results are pretty binary, right? You win, lose, or some. In the UK, we like to draw. So, you know, so on a rugby pitch, right, corporate strategy analogy would be the opposition have got a much better set of forwards than you do, okay, which means they've got a great ability to recycle and retain the ball, right, which is ultimately the main resource in a game of rugby, right? They're much better at holding on to that. So it's kind of counterintuitive to let them have the ball, right? Or to kick it back to them. But, you know, a good strategy in rugby with a team with a better pack is to keep kicking the ball to them because you deprive them of territory, right? And then you lightning strike when you have opportunity, when you have territory and possession. That's the critical moment to attack, right? That's not a bad one. And then golf is another great one, right? You're in the rough. You've got a tree in front of you. You need a par to win the match. Do you chip out sideways and settle for the bogey and see what your opponent does? Or do you try the hero shot, pretend you're Seve and, you know, die in a blaze of glory? You know, after many years of hacking golf balls around Southwest London and Surrey, I default to chipping out sideways. I don't know if that's great strategy or not, but it's where I've landed.
Yeah.
It's funny again, because I think I'm in a similar place as I was with Jared's. I'm thinking, unless, you know, you could accept money from a bunch of billionaires to grow your team, and then you could buy an entirely new set of superstars to play for your team as well.
Yeah, I think there's a good sets of examples in each case, though, of actually relating to different ways to think about strategy. So, like, you know, the first example with the rugby is really assessing your opponent's strengths and weaknesses and adapting your response. The second one is assessing the likelihood of different outcomes and choosing what, you know, appears to be the most likely outcome. And you know, there are different sort of lenses that one can apply to corporate strategy. You know, if you weren't trying to beat your opponent at all in the golf and you were simply trying to maximize your individual performance, the choice would be different again. And I think it's also about actually just really identifying what you are trying to do. You know, like in Carcassonne, you guys ever play Carcassonne?
Indeed.
Tile-based board game. I mean, there are ways that you could play that where you go, my opponent's really good at reinvesting his resources and just rolling through and scoring. What's one way I can deprive him of that opportunity? Well, I can stick a load of farmers down, take the territory, and that'll force him to invest money that he can never get back. And he's really poor at playing when he's got limited resources, and I'm great at that. So, you know, I think it's really about identifying the lens or the nature of competition. Is it a zero-sum game? Is it competitive at all? Henry Ford was not competing with other car manufacturers. He was reducing costs. He was dividing labor. He was standardizing. And then General Motors come along and they start offering people cars in all sorts of colors.
Yeah.
They start offering people what they want. And Henry Ford insisted they can have any color as long as it's black. Right. So yeah, you kind of have to start with the big first order question.
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
And why? Before you can then actually start to think about what strategies to deploy. It's
and is it a plan or is it a ploy and all these sorts
exactly.
It's funny, the
broad amorphous topic.
I was going to add to the sports analogies initially, but actually you made me think of The Producers. Have you ever seen that musical film?
Spring. Probably shouldn't go
exactly
there.
That one. Yeah. But I mean, effectively the premise of that concept expressed in that film or musical was actually they set up on a business venture where they worked out they could make the most money out of this venture by ensuring that their production was a total flop. It makes you think, okay, well, have we ever seen that in our industry?
We see that a lot in our industry, right?
Yeah,
perverse incentives and all that. So,
yeah.
Indeed.